Hey, it's your boy Eddie, your Muay Thai tutor, and I've already taught you guys how to stand and walk, so now it's time to punch. So the first thing that I always teach is the jab. Now, small disclaimer that teaching the jab from a teacher standpoint is probably the hardest technique to teach. Not because it's technically the most difficult, but because it's the most versatile, multi-purpose tool. There's a lot of different applications, a lot of different scenarios. It's a tricky one. So for all the beginners, I'm going to start off with the first version of jab. I want you guys to go ahead and learn that version first and kind of stick with it. And then, listen and follow along to the rest of the video. And when you guys feel comfortable, go ahead and start practicing the other ones. And for all the people that have done Muay Thai before, you guys have probably already done all these versions of the jab, but you guys probably aren't conscious of it and don't even know you guys are doing it. So it's good to be conscious of all scenarios so you guys can do the proper one. I'm going to go ahead and try to teach you guys all the ones that I'm aware of for all the appropriate situations. So yeah, let's get started, guys. All right, so the first version of the jab that I'm going to teach is an aggressive jab, or a jab where I am taking somebody's space and I'm throwing one singular jab, the jab being the strike itself. So kind of like the same movement. I'm going to break this video, or this version of the technique, into two parts, which is going to be focusing on my lower half of my body, just my legs, and then utilizing my upper half, my hands. So without, throwing the jab itself, we're going to take a look at our legs. So almost similarly like when we're taking a step forward, just a regular movement, I want to load up on my back leg. So my back leg is the most important part because that is the catalyst of power. The more aggressive I've become with my back leg, the more powerful my jab will become. Now, traditionally, the jab itself isn't a strike meant to knock somebody out. So don't put too much force or too much thought into, throwing the jab itself too hard. So all the power comes from my back leg. I want to aggressively shoot out with my right leg. Almost as if I was in a sprinter stance. The harder I shoot out, the harder my jab will become. I want to point my calf and be as long as possible. Now, it's really important that when I shoot out, that I am as close to 45 degrees from the ground as possible. If I ever shoot my leg and I am more than that, then the closer to 90 I am, being, perpendicular to the ground, if I'm not at 45 degrees, I run the risk of, when I make contact, pushing myself back. So I want to make sure that by the time I make contact, that I am braced and ready for resistance, because again, no one's going to just let me punch them. So when I hit something, if I were to hit a wall, I don't push myself back, that I am comfortable for something that's going to push back, and I am not going to push myself back with my own force. So aggressively put out, making sure that I'm at a 45-degree angle from the ground, and my other leg, my standing leg, my supporting leg, is going to go ahead and tilt sideways. Now, from a frontal position, we have our y-axis and our x-axis. Our front leg will come very close to that y-axis. I will not touch the y-axis and I will not pass the y-axis. Why? Because the closer I become to this line, the closer I run the risk of losing my balance. So, if this is my y-axis, I want to come as close as possible without touching that line. So, pushing off my back foot aggressively, landing sideways, showing the side of my foot to my opponent, showing the side of my hips, and I'm loading up so that when I'm done striking, I can go ahead and I can push back and reset to square. So you have two motions going on. I have the drive and the pierce of my right leg, and then I have the length of my supporting leg to go ahead and get as long as possible, as opposed to being square, I lose a couple of inches of reach. I want you to imagine, if I had a wall in front of me, getting as long as possible to reach something without letting my body pass through, and then going ahead and pushing off and almost having like a corkscrew mechanism. So one more time, bop, bop. If you want, you can have your hands behind your back, almost lead in with your shoulder. Everything is done with your core and your legs. That is your source of power. 1, 2. 1, back leg, toes pointed, 45-degree angle, pushing back to square. As a southpaw, 1, 2. 1, 2. Again, leading in with my right shoulder. Bop, bop. Back and forth. Bop, bop. All right, now for the second part is going to be our upper body and what we do with our hands. So like the lower part indicated, we're leading in with our shoulder. And, I fundamentally or idealistically, we don't think of the punch as a punch. And what I mean by that is when I tell people that we're throwing a jab or we're throwing a strike, they tense up and they think that their hand is involved or the arm is involved. And the quicker that they extend or, the more that they load up, that the more powerful that the punch becomes. That is inaccurate and false. When we throw our strikes, again, try to throw your strikes with your skeletal structure instead of your muscle. Why? Because our muscles fatigue, and although you can throw something relatively agile in the beginning and with improper technique, and you can get away with it because, again, timing is king. If you do anything poorly, if you do it at the right time, you can knock somebody out. How many times have we seen, Anderson Silva, walk with his hands down and, throw a hook out of left field, land it, and knock somebody out. That doesn't mean it's right, and that's not the way that you should throw a hook. So don't load up, don't extend really quickly, just throw it straight. And when I throw my punch, by the time my punch makes contact, I want to make sure that my hand is as long as possible without hyperextending. And what I mean by that is, when I throw my punch, if I land my punch with my arm bent, I'm going to rely on the strength of my arm to extend and push another body, which is roughly, if I'm in a real fight, or even a regular fight, that's at least, 100 pounds of, of dead weight. And if you're in a fight or you're having resistance, this person's not going to just let you push them around. So they're going to come at you, and in which case it's probably going to be more weight. So no way in hell my arm pushes 100 plus pounds. I want to think of it as if I'm pushing a sled uphill. If you've ever played football, pushing a sled, pushing something uphill. I want to lock out my arms and rely on my legs to do most of the work. My arm is just simply there for stability and length. So extending as quickly as possible and locking out my arm and making sure that it's nice and stiff. Bah. Turning sideways, bah. My supporting arm or my back arm is going to protect, and it's almost like I'm pulling back slightly without lifting my elbow. This is my defensive responsibility, making sure that if something is thrown from the other side, I'm nice and protected. Pulling back, leaning forward, turning sideways, getting as long as possible. Now, when I throw the jab, from this perspective, I want to look and land with my first two knuckles. Whenever I throw a punch, it doesn't matter what punch I throw, I'm always landing with the first two knuckles. Why? Because it aligns my forearm bones. If I hit with this part, my wrist is contorted, then I run the risk of hurting myself and injuring myself. So, forearm bones line up as straight as possible. Doesn't matter which direction I throw. In this case, it's going to be the jab, first two knuckles. And I want to look down the sights of my knuckles as if it was a rifle or a gun. And what this does is it does two things. Is it gets me to get my shoulder to reach and touch my cheek, which creates defensive responsibility for the other side. So on this side, I have my right hand protecting. On this side, although my temple is exposed, I have my shoulder protecting my chin, and I also have the length of my jab protecting myself, meaning that the only thing that can really touch me would be something from that side, which would be a hook. In more cases than not, the straight angle always wins from the circular angle. So if I throw a solid jab, I should be relatively okay. And looking down the first two sights, again, creates stability and it creates length. All right, I know I kind of went on a rant and I repeated myself a little bit, but I'm going to bring both lower part and upper part together to throw the jab. So, as I pause, right leg is at a 45-degree angle. Right now, even looking at myself, I didn't get the full extension by pointing my toe. Even longer. Supporting leg sideways, lower body, hips facing sideways, chest is sideways. I'm as long as possible. My right hand is covering my head. Left hand's extended before I make contact. I'm almost even pulling back my waist to get that speed. I'm not crossing that y-axis. I'm slightly staggered. Shoulders protecting my cheek. I'm looking down the sights. I got stability. First two knuckles. When I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to push off to get back to my stance. Bop, bop. In the southpaw position. Bop, 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 bop. All right, so for the second jab is going to be a jab where I'm not being aggressive, where I am stationary, I'm standing my ground, but I still want to throw a jab with some impact. So for all the jabs that I'm going to discuss, most of the technique is pretty much the same. There's just going to be small details where they change and vary depending on the situation. So for the upper part of my body is going to be the same that I described on the first half, where I'm being aggressive, where, you know, I extend first two knuckles, I'm hiding behind my shoulder, I'm turning my torso sideways to get as long as possible. My backhand is, you know, pinned down to protect myself, and I'm still slightly pulling back with my shoulder. Everything same. The lower part of my body, or the lower half, is going to be the part where it's different. So I am no longer turning my hips sideways and taking that step forward. I'm going to simply just lean. All the weight is still on the balls of my foot. It looks like I'm flat-footed, but my heel is slightly elevated. Why? Because I'm going to still push myself back. But on my back leg, that's providing the power, that slight, you know, lean of power. I still want to be as close to 45-degree angle as possible. Again, if I want to stand my ground and I don't have the option of moving back or moving forward, but I want to stop his momentum coming forward, I want to make sure that when I make contact and this person is coming at me, doesn't drive me back. The force of the direction is going to do that. As opposed to if I lean forward, by the time I make contact, all that energy is going to be transferred down to my leg, which is pointing at the ground. So I have some backing and some support. So, pushing off and leaning forward, my foot is stationary and it's going to be on the ball of my foot, but my hips still turn somewhat sideways as I fire, due to the upper part of my torso doing that action. So, bop, bop, bop. All right, so the next couple of jabs, it's almost gonna be a stew of things. There's not like, you know, like a third or fourth or fifth type of jab, but again, just different scenarios, and the scenarios are going to be, there's going to be like a probing jab and a setup jab, meaning that I'm throwing the jab without the intent of fully making contact. So you'll see a lot of people, just kind of pumping the jab out, and they'll be throwing it with their arm bent, meaning they're not necessarily, locking out. All those things that I described before are not really, applying. Why? Because he's either throwing it to see somebody's reaction, see how they're going to move, to then, either throw an uppercut or a hook, or, throwing it out to measure them up, to see the distance, and then to fire that right hand. So just kind of like moving it around, seeing what's open, seeing how they're going to react, to either set up and throw, or to set up and have distance. And again, if they're stationary, I'm going to aggress. If they are being aggressive, I can throw that jab and they catch me off guard, they come at me. This jab now becomes a post where I stiffen out and I can throw that jab from a stationary position. So, boom, 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 my opponent's not moving around, bam, 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 bam. Bam, 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 bam. Aggressive jab. I can throw multiple jabs, but there's only one jab that fully has power. Almost like music, there's going to be, ta, 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 and then there's going to be that bass. Boom. So, tap, 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 bah. Tap, 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 boom. Bop, 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 boom. And then there's the other scenario where they are setting the pace and they catch me off guard. I'm, setting, making distance, measuring them up. They come at me, they surprise me, and from here, fully extend. I can either back up, I can pivot out, and I have that full length of distance between me and him as a security. Now, when I do that post, I am no longer aiming for their face, but aiming towards their neck or shoulder, chest area, because it's a lot bigger. I'm not going to miss it. I know it's there. And, something can catch me over the top, but if you're going to take a punch, you want to take it on your hairline. That's the thickest part of your skull. You want to protect your chin. So, pumping that jab out, someone comes at me, bah. Nice and guarded, nice and protected. I can cover up, wait for my opportunity to counter, fire back, bah, bah, and then go ahead and re-engage with the jab. I think that's pretty much it. So we have our aggressive jab, we have our stationary jab, we have the situation where we are setting up to be aggressive. We have a situation where we are throwing it out as a measuring tool for defensive purposes. We have, the posts, which is like a stationary jab, but again, used for distance to make sure that I'm comfortable. I think that's pretty much it. If there's any other experts out there, if there's a situation that I'm missing, please comment. This isn't, a competition of, I know more, this and that. I do want to educate people and, put out that information. So yeah, I think that concludes the discussion of the jab, and that's your first technique. So have at it, guys. I wish you guys luck. If you guys have any questions, please comment, like, subscribe, all that. Have a good day. Swadee Ka.